Congratulations on the 100th grand reunion of the Scott Carter Mumfords, and I applaud all of us for making it. Okay, so my name is April Fletcher, and I'm here to tell you about one of America's greatest love stories and my journey uncovering mysteries of the archives. I am the great-great-granddaughter of Jeff and Caroline Hockaday Scott by way of George Scott, his daughter Caroline Scott Bass, her daughter, and my mother, Barbara Ann Bass Fletcher. I'm here to talk about my journey to Halifax. Many years ago, I decided to write a book, and this revelation came to me while employed as a registered nurse in the psych department of Southern Ohio Correctional Facility at Lucasville, Ohio. I knew the SCM Hockaday story must be part of that book. And my cousin Jerry Bass Kane and my sister Melanie Fletcher Howard would contribute their sections to this book as well. However, I was doing Halifax. It's only one chapter, but it's a lot of work. And years before, in the late 70s, my cousin Carolyn, Johnny's sister, and I took our mothers, Edie and Barbara, to a Scott reunion in Chillicothe. I entered the reunion greeting folk, shaking hands, saying, "I am Caroline Scott's granddaughter." And they replied, "I am too." I thought to myself, I don't know these cousins. I didn't know about Caroline Hockaday Scott then. And while my mom had chronicled the Scotts to me most of my life, she usually stopped at George and his being buried between two wives. Then I saw the face. And my grandmother looked so much alike that I still thought it was my G-mom until I saw the dates underneath and then realized the difference. I thought, wow, this is where the face and the skin come from, and I was amazed. As the years passed and the need inside of me to learn more grew. You have to bear with me because it's so much I had to write it down. So the desire to learn and alert minorities to the ever-growing number of the incarcerated made me want to compel me to write this book. My father was a minister all my life, and so I was, active in that work, and as far as trying to get people to see another way. But I knew our family story had to be mixed in with this because, after all, our people have walked 6 months to be free in Ohio, and now Ohio has a penal system that's about 50% black and has for years. So I was compelled to get to Halifax and see what was still there. Didn't know what it would be. I thought it would be a Walmart on some land, and I'd kneel and kiss the land, take some pictures, and just be glad I arrived. But when I decided to do this venture, I first contacted the Halifax Chamber of Commerce, and they sent me a pack of pamphlets and maps and all sorts of things, and some of which you see here tonight. That was in '99, I think, but they're still very valid and very good, to hold on to them forever, because even this Carolina Better Place to Be book, even though it's old and outdated, the stuff they do usually stays the same in months, to come. So if you want to contact them, you can hold on to that forever. Eventually, I searched the internet and found the genesis of the Hockaday family. At that time, I learned the greatest shock of all, that John Hockaday never married. It nearly knocked me out of my chair. So you see, our story is truly unique in America because that's a rare thing. It was only natural that they had a white wife and a white children. So, especially when the poem said he was afraid of what his kin would do, I just naturally accepted that that was the wife and the children, and probably most of you did too. But he wasn't talking about them. I take Edith Bryant at her word, that he was worried about what the rest would do. William, right here, is his baby brother. He had black children too, but he had a white wife. He had white children. And this is his son, Thomas James Edward Hockaday. He's probably the most famous of the Hockadays. They say he was a genius and he just really knew how to will and deal the money. The next, after being fixated on that fact forever, the next shock was that he didn't die. He lived 35 more years after they left. He was probably 89 when he died. So, believe whatever you see in our books, it's a part of a lot of work from people, but as you learn more, you know, you add to it. The more you learn, the more you don't know, though. It's very, very tough work. So he's on the census, he continues on the census until he died he was born in 1789. These facts came about by knowing these Hockadays and seeing the Bible that talked about on the internet. It was so hard, I thought I'd never know the dates of his birth and death. But there it was, and that's why I made copies for you to see. He actually didn't die until 1789. So like I said, 35 years after they left. But I do believe that he thought he was dying. I believe it was divine intervention that he thought he was dying. It obviously wasn't something fatal, because he didn't die. But probably a stomach ulcer, something that his herbs on his farm couldn't heal, that the doctor couldn't help. And so he thought, I gotta get him out of here. You know, just in case, as the poem says, what could happen. And so we all know that he struggled with this, the poem says. After all, they'd never been away from him. He loved them, they loved him. And we know that his compassion won out, because here we are. So my reverse journey finally took place in September 2009. And I believe it is one of the most beautiful months of the year, and Halifax County helped confirm that thought. I was not expecting to be so overcome with simple splendor. It impressed me with its romantically emerald green beauty. So I began to envision John and his love, and Caroline and her love, playing among the spruce, the pines, the hickories, the creeks, the flowers, and the elements of nature and environment. I thought, it looks like home. When you get there, you think Guy County. I'm from Southeast Ohio, so it's very green there, and it just looked like home. You know why they settled where they settled when you see it. And you have to remember, Caroline was full of vigor. She had 6 kids by the time she was 23. So.
I didn't hear the last part.
I said Caroline was full of vigor. She had 6 kids by the time she was 23. She's supposed to be the oldest, and of course she's in, you know, my direct line, so I have to concentrate on the Scotts. But I went to the Halifax Library. I'd had a telephone relationship with the lady over the genealogy department, Miss Betsy, and she was very helpful. And so I took pictures of it, because when you get there, you just know, I'm from Ohio, but I'm thinking this is what home we would call quaint. It's just a beautiful little place. That's old Halifax. It was the county seat, it still is. That's why they have this beautiful courthouse here. That's an old city hall right there. So the courthouse and the library are just a few miles apart, so I'm running back and forth all this day, just looking at records, and I'm carrying these huge, 20-pound deed books, and I'm looking here. That's why I take pictures of this. This is the deed book here, and this is the deed book here, and I'm looking for everything right here. Everything that's got John's name to it. I'm screaming and crying, everybody's ignoring me, and I'm taking pictures, and you know, just to see his name. So one of the, you know, strange things about it was John, according to deed books, didn't own land until 1824. His father gave it to him. She was born in 21. So there's some, you know, cases of that. Anyway, he's willing and dealing, and he's making money. He didn't start off with a lot of money. They weren't rich people. The Genesis tells you that they came here from Wales. And Mrs. Hockaday, who's worked with me closely, been in the family about 50 years, she's taught school 39 years, has told me that they originally came centuries before that from France. So you see light skin, dark hair, and it just all works with Wales and France. And the original was Warwick the immigrant. And since him, there has been about 15 Warwicks. You will not keep up with the Warwicks, okay? There's 2 in every generation. They're serious about Warwick, okay? But you have to study and really look at the dates if you're into this and try to keep up with the generations, because one Warwick was killed even in the Civil War. But I'll go on with my story. I'm traveling down Route 158. That's a connection from Halifax. And I'm going down there because I had seen these cemeteries on the maps, and I want to see if I can find John. That was my ultimate goal. I'm trying to find a chimney stack from the old house, a tombstone, something, you know, that puts me there on where they walked. And I was really happy about Halifax, not just because of the sources there, but since it was the county seat, they still had the green they had back in those days, what they called the green, you know, where they did the little fairs and things. So I did have pictures of that, but I didn't bring them because they possibly did would have been on that territory, because they had to come to Halifax, even though they didn't live. They lived about 10 miles away. They had to come to Halifax to take care of business. I wanted to see the Roanoke River. I realized I got up here close to the land, and I realized, oh, I missed the river. So I went back to Roanoke Rapids. Of course, it wasn't there when they were there. It wasn't settled until the late 1800s. It was just an open area, cotton fields and some settling, but I had to see this magnificent river because it was such a vivid point of the poem to me. So I went back and I took a lot of pictures of it, and it just took my breath away because this is all rapids. You really can't tell, but it's just gorgeous there. And I was looking at the river thinking, you know, this is where they shipped stuff. They talk about that a lot in the poem, that they shipped up and down that river. So Mrs. Hockaday told me that it was called the River of Death. It was so rough back then. And the canal, I got a little pamphlet here, canals were built in Jeff and Caroline's time. And when you see on Jones' 1840 census that he had a navigator who wasn't white, because he's the only white man there, I wondered if it was Jeff, and Toy has since, just a little while ago, assured me that it was, and he was a boatman. And I just always had the feeling it was Jeff. But anyway, I come back in toward town, I drive down here, and I'm getting to where I know it's Hockaday country, and all of a sudden I look and there's Hockaday Road, the sign right here. So again, you know, it's so emotional for me. It took my breath away, and I know some of the cousins saw that in the 80s, but it's still there. I'm looking at all this land thinking, is this where they farmed then? Is this where they were? And so I'm driving up and down the road trying to find the cemeteries. And North Carolina is very strange. You have tombstones right along the road. They're so visible you don't even know they're there. So I'm becoming just crazy, obsessed with this. And finally, a man that took care of one right here. This is just across the road from that sign. He just pointed it out to me, and I walked over there, and there wasn't any John there, but they were all Hockadays. So there's one cemetery that I cannot find. It's on the maps, but I'm thinking that's surely where he is. So I go on down, and I've been through this four-way stop several times, and I'm looking at, you know, down here's more land and more homes, and I don't want to go back down there. It's getting late, and that was this area right here. I can turn left and go back to my cousin's house because she retired from the state of Ohio, and she lives about 2 hours south of Halifax. So the sun is starting to set, and I'm like, what am I going to do? I can't leave. I've waited all these years to get here, and what am I going to do? But at the same time, I'm feeling this. There's a swirl around my head. You know, they're saying to me, now, we didn't tell you to come, but since you're here, you know, find out all you can. So I look to my left, my right, I'm sorry, and I see a little gravel road, and I think, well, maybe down there. You know, so I go down the road, and I see this little lady right here sitting on her porch, and I find that this little grave's there. I turn around and I come back out, and finally, I've asked so many people during the day that I said, what the heck, I'm going to talk to her. So I hollered over, I said, ma'am, do you know anything about Hockaday Cemetery that's back in these woods? And she said, yes, I do. Come on over here, honey. She saved my day. That's my precious Miss Willa May, I call her. And I stayed in contact with her, and she was right. And she looked at me, and I had on some capris and sandals, and she was looking at me like I said, well, I'm not dressed right. And she said, well, they say, you know, the snakes never go in back there. She said, but if you come back when the needles fall. So I'm like, okay, I've been given a gift. So as I leave her home, I'm walking to my car and I'm saying, oh, well, at least I'm here, you know, I know this was all John's, and, you know, this is where they were, and this, just to see the land. And so she's behind me and she says, well, over there was so-and-so's, and over there was so-and-so's, and I'm screaming because I said, Miss Willa May, those are the names in the deed books. He sold off the edges of his land. And at the time I read that, it was recorded and marked by a black hickory and a red spruce, and something I thought I would never understand. You know, almost 200 years old, I have to pay thousands of dollars to get Ancestry.com in here, somebody that can, you know, there's surveyors in Washington's time, but in the deed book, they still are marked by those ancient ways, okay? So when she showed me that, told me that, and I never said those names to her, so I'm just floating at that point in time. And so by staying in contact with her, I knew then actually when I heard her say that, I was validated that, okay, he sold off the edges of his property, but he kept the heart of it. He was somewhere, and I find out since then that the Hockaday, so she led me to the Hockaday, she gave me some names, and this is where they believe John had his land. He was not up here where the Hockaday sign was. He was on further down the road. So we don't know exactly where. We do know this is the Hockaday Cemetery. They've sold off most of the land, but they won't sell that. That's we never sold. The graves back here are very old. Thomas James Edwards, a few others are buried back there. Well, quite a few others actually, and slaves too. They buried black and white together. The slaves generally don't have headstones. They're sunk down. But what Miss Willa May told me, you know, she walked past that cemetery as a child every day to and from school. And it is back in the thick of it now. It's cleared off more than she had thought because of the RVs and four-wheelers. So through the relationship with the Hockadays, and they're very willing. I know in the 80s they didn't, the Hockaday Funeral Home didn't show that they wanted to participate in this, but this group will work with me, and I appreciated it. And they enlightened me about a lot of things. The house where Charles is was actually built by Hockadays a while back, his grandparents. And this little store in front here sits in front of that house. That's Hockaday's store. You probably saw that, Mr. Dawson, when you were down there in the 80s. But anyway, like I said, Miss Willa May was sitting there on the porch snapping peas, and she was looking at me grinning like she knew I was looking for something. They all did. A lot of people came out to the road. But I showed her the pictures of Caroline and Jeff, and she was interested in all that. But like I said, she was letting me know where she thought things were. and we still don't have exact markings, but since this cemetery was founded after, by William, after John, died, that we feel John is buried somewhere out here, probably with this lady. This Hockaday is the one that told me that they knew the story. They didn't have the name just like us, but that they knew she was his lady, just like that. That was very emotional for me too, because she said it just like that. They knew she was his lady. So it was a beautiful thing, and some of the facts that I want to make sure that you gather out of this is that even though my grandmother and my mother didn't push a lot on us about the plantation or the farm or the South, and it wasn't something that they talked about a lot in my part of the family, I did always hear the hints that she had Welsh in her. As a kid you don't pay attention to that. Well, as it turned out, that's why. And if you look at where they settled in Adamsville, right on the Welch Trail there, Bob Evans, there's signs everywhere. So it's very ironic that happened when they went into Adamsville. But some of the facts about Halifax are that Halifax calls itself the birthplace of independence. I didn't know that until I saw this from the chamber. Okay, you're not taught that. You're taught about Philadelphia, July the 4th. It's so important to them, that date, April the 12th, 1776, that it is on their flag. It's Halifax resolves. They resolved to break free from Great Britain. So they were the first colony to declare it. John had several family members in the Genesis that fought in the earliest American wars. So John knew what men would do to be free. His people who came here, immigrated here, he knew at what cost they would do. They would try to break free. As I said, they're very proud of this in Halifax, and it's very interesting to me that occurred there because I didn't know it. And like I said, to find out further, it's on their flag. They're serious about that. He had relatives that fought in the Revolutionary War, the French-American War, the Civil War. North Carolina did not want to fight in the Civil War, according to the Hockadays, which my brother backed that up because he was a Civil War buff. They didn't want to. They said no, they wouldn't secede, but then Lincoln said, "Give me your men," so they had to. They had to do it or fight against their brother. And so, Thomas James Everett, that's his Civil War outfit. He did fight in it. His brother Ward was killed. John survived it. He didn't live. He didn't die, like I said, until 1879. So he came through all that. At that point, the census changed. As I said, he first owned land in the book is August of 1824 is when Warwick gave him some land for the price of love and affection, not just low military. But if she wasn't born until 1820, she was born in 1821, he didn't own that until 24. He's on the census in 1820, but you're on the census if you rent, if you just occupy a space. So he was 31 and 32. He probably already had kids. Caroline was given the name that would forever link her to North Carolina. If he did not own land, could he have owned slaves at that point? Mrs. Hockaday and Reverend Hockadays and I don't believe he did. It's going to be a hard sell for some people, but you see, the belief is that Warwick owned her, and that meant he owned the children. So were the papers forged? The poem lets you know he told him to get out of here quick. You gotta go. If they were free, why would they have to leave? You see, there's a lot there. You gotta work through this and see it for what it is, because Warwick owned Warwick owned Williams' black lady, and at death he gave her back to him. And that's why I have these papers here. He had 2 sons with her. And this is a study on that. This is done in the Family Chronicle. The Hockaday's got this to me. And it's very complicated to understand it as these things go, but it's very interesting at the same time. Her name was Maria. So, if he did own her, if Warwick did own her, and these are facts and theories, then even if he gave her to John between 1820 and 1840, or right after 1840, or John bought her, could he have bought 10 or 11 more? It's almost an impossible task. At any rate, John and Warwick were okay at death. Excuse me, my nose is running. But Warwick loved his son. Now he had a son, Warwick, who was already gone to Tennessee. And William and John were left there. So he left them, he left all his children things, land and slave. But John was the first one named in the will. By the way, John does not have a will on record. I've searched. It's just not there. I don't know if it was somehow stolen, he didn't record it or what. He had so much. And there's just no understanding of that, why he didn't. His father did. So, we'll still be searching for that. But anyway, this letter here it looks moldy and old. That's from John's sister, Tempe. And she had killed her husband. It tells you that in Genesis, that he was an abuser, so she killed him. And she took off on horseback, cut her hair like a boy, and her slaves rode with her. They were very dedicated. And that's when she's writing back to Warwick. It's actually a beautiful letter. It's in glass. The Hockadays have it. You can't see the video at this point, but she's telling him, leave John and William what you will. I'm good to my Negroes. They'll go to the end. I'm so glad they didn't call them Negroes or niggers. They call them Negroes. I'm good to my Negroes, and they will follow me to the ends of the earth. And I would treat yours right. She's begging to come because something was going on in North Carolina in the late 1840s. The land wasn't selling right. And she doesn't say what, but she says, I've heard about so-and-so. So I read the whole letter. And I didn't have time to go into that, but, to research that fact. But me and the Hockadays are wondering what it was. But something was up, so she's trying to tell him to come on, which he supposedly went. I've read both that he died in Halifax and that he died in Tennessee. Tennessee was like a wild wilderness. And Warwick, the son, had went there to make great gains in land. So Tempe, when she got in that trouble, she took off. Now the Genesis would just tell you that Tempe was the only daughter. No, there were 2 more daughters. In fact, Warwick left them stuff in the will too. But this is the old man telling the story like on his deathbed, so everything's not in it. I have this book here. This is one of my resources when we wrote our book, From Plantations to Prisons. I looked at several slave routes for escape, and everything goes north from the Carolina coast. So why Ohio? What got us here? Why did Johnson get to Ohio? John surely was influenced by the Underground Railroad and abolitionists. And they just found out this year, just in the last few months, that there was an active sect in Halifax, and it's been televised. The story was televised. Miss Hockaday and Miss May told me about that. I didn't get to see it, but they just found that out. So he had heard something. And also, we felt like he didn't say go to New York or Canada, because that would have been a more pursued route if they weren't completely legal. You understand what I'm saying? I'm not saying they didn't have free papers or whatever, they were out there visible, but something wasn't right there. You see what I mean? He told him to go all the way through Virginia, a slave state, to get to Ohio. They made it, but you know, it was not typical of the time, as you can see. Every book I've seen on this takes them straight up the coast. I've wondered why, in dealing with them, this whole story and reading why they didn't go, when they went through Charleston, why they didn't stop and make a little more road money and, you know, carry on the journey after that. Another divine intervention. You know, Charleston was they said the greatest city they'd seen, the largest city they'd seen, largest town they'd seen. In 1844, Charleston had a grand population of 1,500 people, but it's still the biggest they'd seen. So, another amazing fact about it is that salt was king, not coal. They were shipping salt all over the place down that river they talk about seeing, okay? Coal had not come on the scene yet. It was all about the salt. So what they were doing was bringing in extra slaves like crazy into Charleston from everywhere to get this salt shipped because they were getting rich off that. Well, cholera epidemic broke out. And in 1844, that's when it broke out. So 100 slaves died within 3 months. Some more divine intervention because they kept moving and didn't bring that illness upon themselves. When they arrived in Gaya County, they didn't stop at Gallipolis. They went on up and out into the woods. Over here is Adamsville, Raccoon Creek, and up there where the sunlight is where a guy on his RV told me that she was, that the graves were. My cousin said, you know, I think Walter told them that she was up there when he was a child, and she's supposed to be buried at Raccoon Creek, but I couldn't get up there. It's so bad. Raccoon Creek here looks like Roanoke Rapids. It's so rough when you look down at it. I had to have a picture of it, but there's barbed wire and it's so thick and trees falling, and all I could think about was my cousin Johnny. I said, well, he can get me up there because he hunts bear and everything. So, but I was on my own going from there to Halifax. So I was just out there taking pictures, and this little path that looks like it'll get you there, but it won't. This is all a deep gully, and like I said, I was just so happy to see the sun shining on her up there, you know, because I've seen the tombstone pictures, but I haven't seen the actual grave. But and you see that area, and all you think about is, yeah, this over here it looks like home again, you know. So they also are in Bob Evans' territory. Adamsville, 35 goes right through it. It's on both sides. So I'm like, he probably lived on Bob Evans' farm, you know. He probably got the land from them because I'm in a split by it. I'm out there all my life and didn't know this, you know what I'm saying? So they lived in a nice spot even if they got here. But here's the catch. She's letting you know if you doubt her in the hospital,